This is a little presentation called My Energy Journey, and I've been asked to help to pull this together. And I'm delighted by the support that I've had from the people who are on the screen at the moment. We've got a panel of 5. 2 of those panel are young people at the start of their energy journey, and the other 3 are seasoned industry professionals who are well on the journey and have had a whole range of experiences which they're happy to sit and share with you. So we hope, as young people potentially watching this video, maybe young people considering a career, parents working out how to support their young students, teachers, whatever, employers, we hope that our energy journey serves to inspire you and will give you something to think about. So I'm going to start off by asking the people on the screen to introduce themselves one at a time, just with a few minutes about their personal journey and where they've gone. And I'm going to ask if Cody would start that off for us. Cody, please, over to you.
Oh yeah, I started my journey in around this time in 2018 with John, where I was asked to come and see a presentation of previous interns on what they'd done, and that was at the Orbis Centre, and I met John for the first time then. I then applied to be an intern with John, and was successful, and then I went for my interview with John and Ailey from Scottish Power, and I'd got successful on being put on the Scottish Power internship, where I had to design a East Anglian 1 underwater tripod and measure the forces of J-tubes, or the forces required to pull a cable through a J-tube throughout the model. And then I now successfully gained an apprenticeship with Aquaterra.
In Norwich. Was it an easy journey to get that apprenticeship in Aquaterra, Cody, or did you have any help on the way?
I had a lot of mentoring from John, and I'm very grateful for that. He's been helping me, and I got very far with the Scottish Power apprenticeship to the final stages where I weren't successful, but John kept me going and was like, keep applying, and pushed me forward and helped me big time get to the apprenticeship that I wanted.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, but I think we can all help along that journey. So I'm going to introduce you now to Flick, who was the very first of our energy interns. I'll say a little bit more about the internship later, but Flick, perhaps you could tell us your story.
So I didn't go to college. I went to a sixth form, and the energy internship was something that was just sent around on an email, and you could choose to apply for it, of which I did. And that was where I first met John, in a boardroom, they like to call it, for professional, my first intern interview. It was really fun. And I ended up getting a placement with James Fisher in 2016, and I spent a month there. And my job was to try and find ways in which to safely let people board ships. From that, I was then offered another internship in Scotland with the University of Strathclyde. And this was also sponsored by the Ogden Trust. And I spent my time with a guy called Ollie, Ed, and Rod, who looked at kites to generate electricity. What I take mostly from my internship was that originally I wanted to go study geology. But as I came to the end of my sixth form, I really, really wanted to try doing physics at university, and I was told I wasn't numerically minded enough for it by my teacher. And as I was at James Fisher around the time that I'd be getting my university placements, I kind of mentioned it to people, and everyone in the department honestly said to do what you want to do. If you want to do physics, you do it. And they all gave me the encouragement and the support to actually, on the day I got my results, to actually say no to my university placement at Keele and actually go to study physics, which I've now completed, and I managed to get a first class degree in. So
wonderful. And you're now where?
I'm now at BAE Systems in Guildford.
Excellent. That's fantastic, Ju. So Dan, tell us a little about your energy journey, please.
Hi, I'm Dan Greaves. I'm the Managing Director and founder of PWS Limited, a Norfolk-based business. I started my energy journey 24 years ago upon leaving university, and entered through a person I knew into the oil and gas industry. I spent
Very good. It's excellent. So now we're going to ask Jenny if she'd tell us a little bit about her journey. And it's fascinating when I've listened to it many times, and I'll be happy to listen to it again.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, I'm Jenny Keever-Sterling. I trained as a geophysicist, so a bit like Flick, I was interested in geology, but not enough really to pursue it throughout a degree. But I was really interested in the application of physics, so geophysics was the perfect combination. After my undergraduate degree, I took a doctorate in marine geophysics and spent probably about 10 years in academia, basically at different institutions, mostly in America, traveling around the world, going out on what they call cruises, but research surveys. Sounds fancier than it is. But actually visiting some amazing places. So I spent a couple of years at the University of Hawaii. I was at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, Scripps, various places, going out on vessels to the East Pacific Rise, to the mid-ocean ridges of the Mid-Atlantic, all over the place. I had the opportunity to go down in the manned submersible called Alvin. So I went down to the bottom of the mid-ocean ridge in the Atlantic, and I saw some submarine volcanoes, John. I don't suppose you've ever heard about that before.
Oh, no, tell us. I think it is in your degree in volcanology, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
There we go.
And then I, wrote a few papers and this and that. But ultimately, a career in academia was not for me. It's difficult to get the right funding and to really pursue that career. And I wanted to move into industry, and that transition was actually very difficult. There isn't really a network that transfers between the two. So it was complete luck of the draw that I found that Fugro, who were a company local to me, were looking for geophysicists, which happened to be exactly what I did. So I spent 10 years with Fugro, went out on vessels with them for the first few years as a geophysicist and surveyor, and ultimately became an expert in geohazards, so assessing seabed and subseabed conditions that could be dangerous to putting anything in or onto the seabed. But ultimately, Fugro decided to close their offices, and my job had moved to a different location. I didn't really want to follow it to that location. So I started to look around for opportunities, and luckily I had a network by that point, and they pointed me in the direction of EGA, which is the East of England Energy Group, which is a trade body. And I managed to become general manager of EGA, which is a complete departure from where I had been going. But it introduced me to the whole arena of the energy industry, all the different facets of it, and really opened my eyes to the opportunities. And I became really interested in the renewable industry at that point, and my focus became to be part of that journey going forward, really. And then from EGA, I joined James Fisher, where I was for 3 years. Ultimately, I was the survey manager at James Fisher, making sure that we brought in new work and surveyed the seabed, obviously, supporting what James Fisher did, but also, taking in our own contracts and providing really professional results. And from there, I've joined OHT, which is where I am now, and they're a big vessel owner, a Norwegian-based vessel owner, and we're building one of the first foundation installation floating vessels, which the first project is going to be Dogger Bank in 2022, and then we have some big plans for all sorts of new installation technologies coming up and innovations over the next few years. So, really exciting times.
Fantastic. What a story. So, Roger, do you want to finish the industry experts tour?
Yeah, hi. I'm Roger Moore. I work for James Fisher Marine Services here in Lowestoft. As a local company, we currently have 12 ROV units covering sort of 3 different sectors, as well as diving equipment and blade replacement units. We're currently involved in the offshore oil and gas and wind industries, as well as rivers, local authorities, local government, nuclear markets. So basically, nearly every industry you can think of in this involves James Fisher in some way. It's a bit like tentacles. There's lots of different departments. My career started, I suppose, on a youth training scheme, having a good experience and wanting to sort of take things apart and put them back properly, and that with motorbikes and cars at an early age. I then went and started a youth training scheme. This was at the age of 16, and placement at John Gross Trucks in Lowestoft and body repairs. And after I reached 18, I realised that there wasn't a great deal of for me in this particular thing, so I joined the Army. It was the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. I did my trade training and then went on to placement down in Tidworth, where we had main battle tanks, big chieftains, challengers, centurions, lots of heavy kit. And after doing this and various other different sports, I then came back out to civilian life and moved into, again, mechanics and MOTs at their various different centres. And I needed a little bit more push and something to keep my mind active. I always like to progress as much as I can. I then rang around the network I had at the time, and someone offered me a job with ROVs, which I knew nothing about at the time. And of course, these are remotely operated vehicles. You operate them from above the surface, but ultimately they swim around under the surface under your command. And it's a big industry. There's lots of things that they can do. As a company, we run internships, we run work experience for the local schools, and part of that is I teach ROV courses all around the place. We're just sending a system now over to Brazil, and I'm going over there in about a week's time to actually teach them how to use it and how to technically keep it running correctly. So that's about us at the moment. We've got 2 apprentices that are just finishing off their year 3. We're going to be giving a place, hopefully, to an extra guy who, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, his company is going bust or closing. So we're looking to take him on. He's also in his year 3, and then after the 4th year, we're looking to take on more apprentices. So it's all looking good from the teaching and training front.
That's fantastic. Dan, can I just ask you one little point that earlier on? You're on mute at the moment, but I know when you clear that, you'll tell us a little bit about the international side of your experience, and also that transition between oil and gas and into the renewables industry.
Yeah, so throughout my career, I've worked mostly in Africa, to be honest, in Angola, Nigeria, South Africa, Cape Town. While at James Fisher, I was responsible for the US market and Asia Pacific, which is the polar opposite time zone to the biggest time zone difference you could ask for. The offshore industry and the offshore wind market is pretty transferable, which is why you see a lot of companies who are prevalent in Europe working in other markets. My transition from oil and gas to offshore wind was at the time I saw as a high risk move. That's because the offshore wind industry was unknown. A lot of colleagues in the oil and gas industry were very skeptical of offshore wind, and now it's the polar opposite. Oil and gas workers are dying to get into the offshore wind industry and transfer their skills. So yeah, it was different, but the international market is very transferable. So if you start your career here through this simple process, the skills are transferable across the world in offshore wind.
That's fantastic. That really adds it up nicely. I'll just say a few words about my background as well. I started off and there's a common theme here with regards to travel and international, and the fact that energy and engineering are global industries. I started off at the age of 16 as a navigating cadet, broadly sitting on a ship and working out where we were. In the old days before sat-nav, when everybody could tell where you are with your phone and your watch, I had one of the old original sextants, and we'd used to look at the sun and the stars and have a bit of a guess as to where we were. And we generally ended up where we wanted to be, so I must have done something right. After a few years of that, I qualified and then came ashore and started again on the shore side of working on vessels, and ended up as a general manager or the safety marine manager for Wimpy Marine. Again, you'll find that careers have many peaks and troughs, and there was a downturn in the market. I decided to move on, and after a brief period in accountancy, I went into waste management, so I was responsible for running a fleet, in the end, a fleet of vehicles. But innovation came to the fore there, and we worked very much with what can we do for an offshore industry that we have to do differently that for an onshore industry. So moving from there, part of that journey took me into energy and networking, really, formally through the Chamber of Commerce, and then to an organisation which I started called EAGA, the East of England Energy Group, on the 1st of April 2001. As I like to say, no money, no members, but lots of ideas. And it's still going strong 20 years later. And as you heard on Jenny's journey, she spent a little bit of time as a general manager of EAGA, and James Fisher was on the board of EAGA through people like Martin Dromfield. So if there's one common theme to the things I've been doing, it's been about connecting people up and networking. I moved on after James Fisher to work for myself as Best Proactive, and the reason I did that was because towards the end of my career I wanted to try and help younger people as well to find their own careers and their own energy journeys in an industry which has served me well. And so I've been involved in an organisation called the Ogden Trust, and delighted to say that today we'll be talking about launching our 2021 programme. Flick, as I said, was one of our very first interns. Cody was on the last internship programme. Overall, over just 4 years, we've managed to help 126 young people on that journey. And we were set to break all records until COVID came along and knocked on the door. We weren't to be defeated, and we've put up on the Ogden website, and I'll make sure that links are available for anybody who wants to look at it, a virtual programme working with Vattenfall, Scottish Power and James Fisher. And I'm delighted by the support that I got from Roger in helping to design that programme. So that's where we are. We're all here today really just to talk about our own energy journeys and to give the opportunity for the younger people in the panel, Flick and Cody, to be able to ask some questions of the more seasoned, experienced people. Did you like that? I wasn't going to say the old ones. So Cody, have you got a question?
That's a different one now.
Oh, good, excellent.
Whoever. Is there anything you regret when you were going throughout, like, your starting and throughout your whole career, that you regret you didn't do along the journey?
Well, that's a fantastic question. Who wants to start that one off? Dan, what about you?
Yeah, I was given the opportunity to travel a lot more when I first started in the oil and gas industry, and I didn't, and I wish I had, because I learned to enjoy traveling around the world, and I guess that's my biggest regret there.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating now that with all the restrictions that we've got, we can't even travel down the end of your garden path, how things have changed, but hopefully things will move on. Jenny, any thoughts on that question from Cody?
I think only with hindsight, I think my first, I wouldn't change a thing really about my career path. My first 10 years, as I said, were in academia, and then I spent a good chunk of time with Fugro. And I was pretty convinced that their job was for life and that I would be with that company forever, no matter what. And I wasn't going to make any waves. I wasn't going to ask for more money or ask for different opportunities or more training or anything. I was happy with what I was doing, and I didn't see the sense in changing anything. And that came to an end, and I was forced to consider and look at things. And I suppose the only regret I would have looking back was perhaps if I had been a bit more proactive in seeking out different opportunities or asking more for what actually I wanted to do, turns out I was a little bit bored doing what I was doing at the time. And in fact, if I had been a bit more proactive in that, then perhaps I would have had different opportunities to go to different places around the world or tried a different company and got that experience myself earlier in my career. But actually, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at.
That's a great segue to Roger and what you did when you got bored with your career, Roger.
Yeah, it's not really the question of like making, it's all about decisions. You're going to get to, a Y splice or whatever you want to call it, two forks in the road, and you're going to get a decision. Do you carry on doing this? Do you move to another location? Or, and it's the networks that you're building as you go through. For me, there wasn't enough training or establishments in Lowestoft at the time for me to do it, so that's why I joined the army. And at the end of my army career, it was a question of do I go to a place where I'm not going to be happy, or do I move back and start doing on that side of it? So I chose that route. And if you look back about everything you've done, as long as you are 100%, you're given 100% to everything you do and you enjoy it, I think you're always going to choose the right path. It's don't do it for money. I have taken a couple of jobs that have been very, very well paid, but ultimately you think what am I doing here, and you're always going to revert back to the ones that you like. I have seen lots of places. I've been all around the world. I've met loads and loads of people, and that has led to increasing my knowledge, increasing the amount of people that I meet, and ultimately led to where I am, I suppose, today. And I'm trying to give back to those and to pass on any information for these people now coming through and writing their CVs and trying to look for the right words to put in front of a prospective employer. So I think everybody has the responsibility to do that.
Fantastic, Roger. I hope, Cody, that gave you just a little bit of an insight into it. Flick, have you got any questions for the panel?
So everyone seems to have moved around and moved jobs and made the decision. But on that, how easy have you found to be able to move? Have you ever felt stuck? And what do you think would be the main kind of skills, or what puts you above the rest to maybe get a different role?
Who wants to start that one? Jenny, do you want to start that off?
I'll start if you want.
Oh, okay. Roger, go for it.
Mainly because I like talking. I like the sound of my own voice. So a lot of people have already said it. Yeah. But for me, that's what it is. It's you've got to present yourself for any particular job. You've got to turn around and say, look at me, I'm here, and having a name like Roger Moore has made it very, very easy to get noticed wherever I am. A lot of people in the forces, that was like, who are we going to volunteer for this? Oh, Roger Moore, there we go. And it's meant that people know you. So having a name like that, you've got to be upfront. You've got to be like, yes, this is who I am. I'll do it. And you just got to gain as much experience, as much qualifications as you can, because ultimately, if you do make a mistake, people are going to know it. And in this industry, it's very easy to point out the people who are not the people to employ, and those people who are the ones who want to employ. So you want to be in the latter, and just give it 100%. Just make sure you enjoy it and go for it.
So thank you again, Roger. Jenny, over to you. What about you?
Thanks, Roger. Yeah, I think my career path has been, well, like all of us, really, it's been a bit of a zigzag. It's certainly not been a straight line. And at each point, at each junction, there's been a big decision to make. And I've known really in my heart what it is that I want to do, and whether I felt lucky to have that opportunity. And it's just come out of nowhere. I'm sure part of it has been to do with the work that I've done beforehand, and the people I've got to know. So you just have to sort of follow your interest, your passion, and ultimately it will lead in the right direction. It may not appear to be quite straight, but as long as you're doing what it is that interests you, and something, even if it's new, something that really you've got a passion for, and ultimately that's what's happened with me. I've jumped all over the place, really, but discovered that where I've ended up is the right place for me.
Fantastic. And Dan, any thoughts again?
Only to add a couple really, in that I believe that if you want to challenge yourself all the time, you often run out of the challenges are less available when you've been there a while. You know the job you're doing, you know what you're meant to be doing every day. Sometimes people need that challenge, and you find that in these industries because it's so technologically driven. 15 years ago, if you look at someone's CV in the oil and gas industry from 15, 20 years ago, I can pretty much assure you, having, as I know a lot of them, is they move from place to place doing the same job. What you find now is people, you move from company to company to progress into something that interests you. Don't be afraid of it. There's no job for life these days, as everyone likes to say, but there's a passion for life. So that's what you enjoy. Go do it.
How can we help you and Flick and Cody? What could we do to help to inspire you anymore? So what can we do differently? Flick.
For me, actually just hearing about where people have been is a lot. It takes a lot. When you come from somewhere like Lowestoft, it sounds bad, but everyone thinks the same. You think there's not very many open doors. So actually hearing about people that have actually gone to Africa or going to Brazil next week or been to Hawaii, it's a really big thing to let you know that you can achieve that no matter like where you come from. So yeah, stuff like that is good.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Cody, what do you think?
It's like the networking events. It's, you know, when I went to the North Seas conference, I spoke to Ailey without even knowing her, and then I walked into the interview room and she was sat there. So I had a little bit of extra help, or not help, but like knew who she was and could have a talk. And it's just like when you go to the events, everyone's so willing to talk. That I think that's the best bit, and then just more invites out to the younger people, so that they can have a little wander about and have a chat with a few people, and then they might just bump into them one day in an interview room, like I did.
Absolutely, and I think there's a great message in there. Don't be afraid to ask a question. There's no daft questions. Be succinct in what you want to ask. Look around. Encourage colleagues to work with you as well. So, you know, there's no real mystery to it, apart from the fact that everybody uses electricity. It energizes us all. It's fundamental to everything we do. We're on a journey of energy transition, really moving from a hydrocarbon society to a renewable society. It doesn't mean overnight that oil and gas and hydrocarbons are going to disappear. We'll have potential for new civil nuclear. We're going to have offshore wind. But one thing we do need is a balanced mix of low carbon, affordable electricity to be able to power all of our futures. I want to just close on one request from Jenny, because we did a little bit of a dry run on this before Dan got his Nobel Prize. And we want to just leave us with 60 seconds of your little closing thoughts about just follow your passion, Jenny.
Well, now I have to remember. Yeah, I think really the takeaway that I would want anybody to take from this is just to follow your heart. It sounds completely corny and cliched. You will come up against decisions where you have to follow your heart or your head. And as long as you've got that interest and that passion, and you can see a way for you to be involved in the work that you're doing, you'll always have a fulfilling career that ignites interest in you and that you are happy with at the end of the day. And that's what we all want.